Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking to Jonathon Hensley, CEO of Emerge. Jonathon, I've been looking forward to this conversation. You are a digital product agency, and I've been looking forward to talking to you because I think so many people are stuck in this space, and you work with clients to really take their business strategies and new technologies to help them with their products, whether it's internal or external. And I think a lot of times people don't think about that internal product, right? How to kind of sell from within. And not only that, but how to really, and I see this as a business coach, create your internal people to be your biggest ambassadors of a product when you need to sell it externally. So let's kind of dive in. And we're also going to be talking about your book, that the name of it is one of my favorite words, alignment, overcoming internal sabotage and digital product failure. So let's start with talking about two things. One, what does alignment mean to you, and why do people sabotage themselves?
Oh, two great questions. Well, let's start with the first one. I think alignment conceptually is understood by most people, but it needs to be broken down in a business context, especially for leaders today. So when we think about alignment in the context of driving innovation, driving company growth, dismantling traditional structures of silos in organizations, especially as you're trying to create more decentralized teams that can work autonomously today, we have to think about these four parts. And those parts include first the individual. And building alignment at the individual level means helping everyone in the organization understand how their experience and their skill set contributes to realizing the goals of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Two is the team, is how does the combined skill set and expertise of a team come together to fulfill the company's objectives, missions, deliver and solving the problems that are most important for that organization to deliver. Third is the organizational alignment. Are the resources, people, processes, and systems aligned to deliver the intended outcome of the leadership? And then fourth, are all of those things aligned with the marketplace?
Yeah.
And so when we look at alignment has to be happening at all four levels consistently in order to drive incredible growth. And you see this from the biggest leaders and those that are beating the odds again and again. They're consistently operating from a place of alignment.
Yeah.
So this goes to your second point. Well, why does this internal sabotage happen? And I think that, just to put some stats out there to reinforce this. So in the digital transformation product space, 84% of all product transformation initiatives fail or are underperforming. And so that's a staggering amount. I mean, last year, the spend was something like $3.6 trillion worldwide. So when you think about that, the vast majority of that money was not delivering on the intended outcome and investment that these leaders, whether it's small business or Fortune 50 companies, were making to deliver on product and innovation. So when we look at that, we really look at, well, what is the foundation of that failure? And most of the time you'll hear people talk about, well, we didn't understand our customer well enough, or we couldn't move fast enough.
Yeah.
And those are true, but they're symptomatic. And fundamentally, they were misaligned from the beginning. And we see that more times than often when we dig into the research of where failure started, it either failed because they fell in love with an idea versus falling in love with the problem that they were there to solve that created real tangible value for the audience they were solving that problem for. And so fundamentally, we have to remove that idea of fit and realize that the organization itself is responsible for not building initial alignment in order to move forward. And that sabotaged every function involved in order to move forward.
Yeah, I love the way you broke that down. I'm a big believer that when you are in alignment, you can take action. And when you are in kind of an adjustment period, I think a lot of times companies get kind of stuck in this adjustment period and don't have the patience to work through it. And then they end up going down, the wrong path. So I appreciate you kind of dissecting that a little bit. Let's talk about the digital world for a minute. I think some people listening to this may say, a digital product agency, what does that even mean, right? I mean, I remember in 1995, I started an internet company with my brother and a buddy of ours. And people would say to us, a website, like, what does that mean? Like it does. And so I think there's so many terms going around. Define kind of what digital product agency means before we jump in.
Sure. So in our case, as a digital product agency, we're focused on three fundamental areas of delivering product. One is helping clients with product strategy and really understanding the foundations of strategy that are critical to build alignment and success in scaling a business. Two is we focus on experience design. How do you actually design products for people? And so instead of a product just looking good, it has to function correctly. And so we really focus on understanding psychology and focusing on behavior and motivational design. And third is the technical aspects of actually developing and delivering, supporting, and scaling a product as you bring it to market or as you're developing it internally to support and empower your employees. So that's really where we focus. I love your website analogy, though, and this is a conversation that comes up a lot, especially at top senior levels. I was recently having a conversation with the CMO of a health network, and they were asking me, our website is just a marketing tool. Why do we need to focus here? And the conversation shifted quickly. And we said, well, no, it's now the front door to your hospitals. And I think the great distinction that's important for everybody to understand is that traditionally, when a website is a marketing tool, it's there to try to persuade somebody to do something with you. It's my product or service is better than my competition. Your website itself actually becomes a product the second you shift from it being a tool to persuade and convince, and it shifts to how do you empower somebody to actually do something. And that ability to do something and it becoming a product itself completely shifts your strategic approach and how you manage and deliver performance from your website. Yeah. And that drives customer experience, customer acquisition, retention. It covers the entire spectrum. And so that's fundamentally where we're coming in to really help people.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. I talk a lot about as a business coach, productizing things. And you're talking about, your website becomes a product. And when I talk about productizing things, most people don't think of things like that. They don't think of themselves as a product. They don't think of a service and how to kind of frame it and wrap it up as a product so people can kind of digest it and understand what they're buying. So it's not just kind of this intangible service that they can't wrap their arms around. So talk a little bit about, because you're in a digital space too, where in many cases you're selling. I loved the book, Harvey Beckwith's book, Selling the Invisible. I read it many, many years ago. And it talks about kind of like how you sell something that's invisible, right? And so talk about the importance of how you take anything in the digital space and then create a product out of it. And even if it doesn't seem like an off-the-shelf product, how you make the product. Yeah.
Well, I think first off, you have to understand if you have an idea or a service or something that you're already offering and you're thinking about productizing it, or you're looking to innovate and disrupt a space, you have to understand what is the job that customer is hiring your product to fulfill. So as an example, when Uber came into market and they disrupted the market, the idea of hiring somebody to transport you from point A to point B has been around for forever. And so what Uber did is they created a new business model and a new way to fulfill that need. And I think fundamentally, when you look at your offering, your idea, you have to understand what job am I fulfilling, and then how am I competing with that job. And so Clay Christensen, who's a Harvard business professor, wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, where he really talks about this idea of job theory. And it's a fantastic entryway on how to think about productization. And there's, they did a project with a major fast food company where they were trying to understand what's the job of a milkshake. And because they were stagnant in their growth and they were stuck. And when you really peeled those layers back and you understood the job that milkshake was being hired to do is for commuters. And all of a sudden they weren't competing with other milkshakes. They were competing with bagels and other breakfast foods for commuters. And that completely changed how they could package their product, create a value proposition, and really connect in the right way with their customer.
Yeah.
So when somebody's thinking about that idea of productization, I think first of all, you need to understand the job that that product or service is going to be fulfilling for that customer. And that will change the landscape and where you and how you deliver that product successfully. And that's one of the fundamental pieces that we see.
Yeah, I love that. Just kind of continuing the talk on fundamentals in your book, alignments, right? I think when you are fundamentally sound, it's easier to get into alignment. Who is the reader for the book, and what's the reader going to get out of the book?
So the reader is actually two ends of a spectrum. There was this really big hole between senior leadership, from the CEO down to the product teams, those that product managers, designers, and engineers. And I wanted to write a book that could equally provide value for the C-suite in driving success for the organization and those product teams, so they could build a common language and start to facilitate a really critical conversation that needed to be moved up the chain. So I really needed to have something that was inclusive of that entire audience, that was driving product. I think the other key thing about the book and why it had to be written is not just because of this idea of alignment that came out of interviewing people, but there are consistent companies and leaders that are beating those odds of that 84% failure rate, not just once, again and again and again. They're doing something very different, but very fundamental in the way that they lead and they look at problems. And I think that was a story that needed to be told. And so working with that was really the central point of the book and how to connect with that audience. And one aspect of that really was amazing is bringing what, as a lot of companies kind of originally have been structured around this idea of kind of, I would say, an industrial air kind of command and control model. More and more companies are trying to find themselves in a more of an autonomous, distributed, empowered model with their teams. And that's even more important now with more remote workforce opportunities taking place. And so the book found a whole nother resonance with people in the last year, really trying to understand how do I set up people for success, and bring some of the core principles of alignment into their organizations.
Yeah, I love it. So let's rewind a little bit. I believe that people, the best teachers teach their pain. And so if you wrote a book on alignment, that tells me at some point in your life you were out of alignment. And so how did you, to give us the Reader's Digest version of where you were out of alignment and how you got back into alignment and ended up with your business today, Emerge?
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, I've lived through the pain and suffering of many of these elements of being out of, or misaligned. And I think that leading companies, consulting, with companies, after a while, you have to take inventory. What are the mistakes I'm making? Why are things underperforming? Why am I failing in this area and not that area? Why am I seeing clients who have every strategic advantage or all the resources in the world? What is causing their failure? And a little over 10 years ago, I became obsessed with this idea is everybody celebrates the big idea or the winners, but we don't really take enough time to really understand failure and the roots of that failure. And I became obsessed with answering that question. And so I started, looking at taking inventory and stock in my own, misses in my career and in my business. And then I started deep diving into those of my peers and into those of clients. And then we started tackling this and identifying people who were beating those odds. And we, went full out to realign ourselves as a company.
When I have a quick question though on that. When you were out of alignment, right? I want to kind of tap into those moments where like that day, that moment, that hour, that week, that felt like, man, I don't know how we're gonna kind of get through this. But I think most people don't realize they're closer than they think. And then all of a sudden, a day, a week, a month goes by, and they've actually accelerated because they were doing a lot. They just couldn't see it or feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a fundamental thing, again, I keep using that word, but it's so appropriate, is we had a huge acceleration point when all of a sudden the vision for the company was not just defined, but was measurable with a clear end destination.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at the vision for a product or a company, most times it's positioned as something that's aspirational. And while I think that's really important, it's very difficult to have everybody involved have it not just a common, a shared understanding of it, but really have a shared purpose with and connection to that vision for the company if it's not tangible. And so the job of leaders, whether you're a team leader or a company leader as a CEO, is that there has to be a crystal clear defined vision that's measurable and long-term to say, this is where we're going and we're going to do this together. And that the measurability part of that is often missing. So it leaves it to interpretation, and it leaves it somewhat missing the substance necessary for each function of the business, sales, marketing, product development, to actually make the decisions they need to successfully move the organization forward.
Well, and also if it's not measurable, if it's not specific, I talk about this all the time with business as a business coach and it doesn't matter. I mean, I work with, probably like you work, solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies and everything in between. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. If you're not measurable and specific and detailed and spoon feeding the message, then the interpretation and the narrative becomes that of the individual. So then you have all of these mixed messages, and things can go the wrong way fast. So I concur with everything you just said. Yeah, spot on.
It's a huge problem, and you see it manifest itself. I mean, if anybody that's listening can think about this one, that there's this challenge called confirmation bias, where people psychologically seek out information that confirms their beliefs. And this is something that leaders do, everybody does. And in the absence of clarity, we fill in the gaps with our biases.
Yeah.
Biases are incredibly powerful. It helps us make quick reactions. It's part of psychology, but it's also very dangerous when we make assumptions that our customers' needs are the same as our interpretation of those needs.
Yeah, well said.
Products and tremendous amount of resources and time go askew, or they become misaligned with the intended outcome.
Yeah.
And rarely is there a crystal clear definition, not just of the vision, but the intended outcome of each step of the organization.
Yeah.
One other example, I'm sure you've experienced this many, many times with your expertise in coaching, is that when you think about just marketing and sales at the front of the line. So, very traditionally, marketing is like, well, we're responsible for generating demand, and sales is responsible for closing the deal. And somehow product and customer support is responsible for retention. And the reality is that every single function exists for the same reason, driving customer lifetime value.
Yeah.
So the silo of those metrics usually are misaligned in most organizations from the get-go. And you realize that those companies that are having, double-digit, triple-digit year-over-year growth, those things are never misaligned.
Yeah, no, I know, I hear you. I love it. All right, quick speed round for you. Favorite book and why?
Favorite book, Hard Things About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. It's a fantastic book.
It's a good book. I read that book. Yeah, I like that book. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Listen more than you talk.
Yeah, I love that. Finish this sentence. One thing that every company needs to do to get into alignment today is?
Build a common language.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are and how they can connect with you, Jonathon.
Our ideal clients are people that are looking to improve or develop their new products to bring to market, or drive innovation within their company. And so we work across sectors, but we're really looking to partner with leaders who want to drive change in the organization and follow an alignment process in their work. Best way to stay in touch with us is to go to emergeinteractive.com. If you're interested in getting a free copy of my book, please schedule a consultation meeting. We'd love to talk with you. Happy to send you a copy.
I love it. I do the same thing. I give my book away for free at johndwaskin.com. And it's great. It's a great tool. All right, Jonathan, I appreciate your wisdom and everything that you talked about, from the fundamentals of alignment, the fundamentals of vision, the fundamentals of being measurable, the fundamentals of being specific, the fundamentals of getting to alignment. And it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, but great things happen, and companies we see who are in alignment take great action. And I appreciate your insight. Think community, if Jonathan can help you, please reach out. Jonathan, thanks, man. Always good talking to another Jonathan. So good to talk to you, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic.